11, we're going to talk about the senses in a new view. You rely on your sensory organ to collect information about the world. Once your brain has the information from your sensory organs, it is going to push to a response. This response will mainly maintain homeostasis. Is this really true? Do we need the senses for homeostasis? Of course we do. For example, your eyes, they are just a bright light. Your skin, it feels the cold, it feels the heat. And as we said, one of the most important points to be kept regular at all time is your body temperature. If you get more light than you need inside your eye, you're going to literally go blind. So part of the function of the sensory organs, beside the fact that they relate you to your environment, is also to maintain homeostasis. Your sensory organs also influence your behavior. Although homeostasis is strictly defined as the regulation and maintenance of body internal condition, also your behavior can prevent you from death. For example, you're going to cross the street now, you look both ways, the road is clear and you decide to step on it. And then you see a bright light coming from the end. What are you going to do? The sense of vision is going to send the message to your brain that there is a bright light. Your brain already has stored information that says that bright light comes from a car, and it is then going to, through the impulses which travel down the bundles of axons, and then the brain is going to filter these impulses and then send more and more messages to the rest of your organs, and then you are going to step back. Stepping back because you saw a bright light is a very important reaction that kept you alive. So part of the function of your senses, by sending all of these messages and impulses to your brain, is also to keep you alive. Your senses may also influence on other behaviors to help protect your tissues from damage. For example, if you didn't have shivering when you got really cold, or if you didn't retract your hands quickly when you touched a hot pot, your skin will be damaged. So your senses are protecting you at all times, beside the fact that they are connecting you to the universe. The senses detect both physical and chemical stimuli. Physical means like the pressure, like the touch. Chemical stimuli means something that is translated from a chemical to your body. For example, all of the food that you eat has to be dissolved in the saliva for your tongue to sense it. This is a chemical stimulus. But if, for example, you're drinking very hot tea, the hot tea touches your tongue, this is a physical stimulus. What types of receptors do we have that help our senses translate all of these things happening around us into actual stimuli? We have in our eyes photoreceptors. Photo coming from the light. Photoreceptors, they detect the light. Mechanoreceptors. Anything mechanical means that it's related to pressure or movement. So mechanoreceptors, what do they respond to? They respond to pressure, movement, and tension. Thermoreceptor. Thermal means temperature. So thermoreceptors are going to be responding to temperature, whether it's a high temperature or it's a cold temperature. Chemoreceptors, the chemicals that are dissolved in different fluids. You can only smell if whatever the smell that is coming into your nose dissolves into the mucus of your nose. So your nose is full of chemoreceptors. Okay, the same occurs for your tongue. You can only taste the food if it's dissolved within the saliva, and then you can taste it. So we have photoreceptors for the light, mechano, pressure, movement, tension, thermo, temperature, chemo for chemicals, and then we have the pain receptors. The pain receptors, although the pain could be due to pressure, it could be due to chemicals, it could be due to something related to temperature, thermal, but at the end the pain receptors, they respond to extremes like extreme heat, extreme cold, extreme pressure, and of course to the chemicals. So we have receptors for each, and then we have the pain receptors that respond to the extreme of each. So we have photoreceptors for light, mechano for pressure, movement, tension, thermoreceptor for temperature, chemoreceptors for chemicals that are dissolved in your fluids, and then the pain receptors. The pain receptors, they collect all of these but in their extreme state. So extreme pressure is translated as pain. If you have extreme heat, translated as pain. Extreme cold, translated as pain. So it has the same receptors but in the extreme state. We will start with the vision. The eye. Of course, the eye is the organ of sight. This is the organ that is responsible to give you the vision. The eye is a highly specialized and a highly complicated organ that is responsible for giving you vision and then sending these impulses to the brain to translate tons and tons of things that you see every day, to store tons and tons of experiences that you go through every day. Humans rely on vision more than any of their other senses. In fact, the eye contains about 70% of all of the sensory receptors in your body. Can you imagine this? More than your skin, more than your tongue, more than your nose. The eye contains 70% of all the sensory receptors of your body. Most of these receptors, they are photoreceptors. As we said, photoreceptors are responsible for detecting the light. Inside the eye, there is a part that is called the retina. Let's look at it. Here is it. Let's look at the composition of the eye all in all. Okay, we will start from here, from the outer layer of the eye. The outer layer of the eye is called the cornea. The cornea is a transparent membrane and is responsible for collecting the light rays. Next, we have right after the cornea, this is what we call the anterior chamber, which is the chamber that is present in the front. And then we have the colored part of the eye, which is the iris. The iris has a hole in the middle, which is called the pupil. The iris is responsible for increasing or decreasing the size of the pupil according to the amount of light to which the eye is subjected. So if there is a lot of light, this iris is going to become tighter to decrease the amount of light that is entering into the eye. And then if there is no light, or around the eye we have darkness, the iris is going to dilate or increase the size of the pupil in order to allow more light to enter into the eye. Then we have the lens. The lens is the one responsible for collecting all of these light rays in order for you to see things. Then we have all of this. This is called the posterior chamber or the vitreous chamber. It is all formed of a jelly-like material. This is at the back of the eye, and then connecting into the optic nerve we have the retina. The retina is responsible for translating all of these impulses that were collected by the eye into something that the brain can read. The specialized cells inside the retina, we have the rods and the cones. They are also the photoreceptors. The rods, they detect the light intensity, and especially the white and black vision. And then we have the cones. The cones detect the color. So in the retina, which is at the back of the eye, which translates all the impulses coming from the outside and then transmits them into the optic nerve, we have two types of cells, the rods and the cones. The rods that are responsible for the detection of the light, especially black and white vision, and then the cones which detect the color. The rod cells are sensitive to low amounts of light, and the cone cells, they need bright light to function. As we said, the rods, they are responsible for the white and black vision. Black means that it's dark around me and I still can see some shapes, so this is done by the rods. while the cones, they need bright light in order to differentiate between the different colors you have around you. This is why you have difficulty seeing color in the dark. Because sight depends on the amount of light available, there is a way to control the amount of light entering into your eyes. As we said, this is the iris, which is the colored part of your eye. It controls the opening of the pupil, which is the actual point of entry of light into your eye. It controls the amount of light entering your eye at all times. Before the light can stimulate the rod and cone cells in the retina, it has to pass through all these structures until it reaches the retina. It enters through the protective layer, which is called the cornea, and then it moves through the pupil. After the pupil, it has to pass through the lens. The lens is right behind the iris, and this is the one responsible for focusing the light for you to see. And then it is going to reach to the retina. In the retina, the light is going to stimulate the rod and cones, which are going to cause a nerve impulse. It all goes back to nerve impulses, students. If you touch something, it all goes back to nerve impulse. If you eat something, if you smell something, if you want to move an organ, it all returns to nerve impulses, because all of your body is controlled by your brain. Your brain has the software for every single piece of hardware around your body. So if you're seeing something, this thing has to be sent into your brain, so it connects this thing that you just saw to the software of the eye, and then tells you this is an animal. Imagine seeing an animal that you haven't seen before. Your brain will only understand the fact that this is an animal. But unless you have the information stored in the brain that this is a chihuahua, this is whatever it is, unless you have this information stored in the brain, you will not recognize the animal. You will just know the fact that this is an animal. Okay? So it all goes to, again and again and again, a nerve impulses. The impulses are going to travel through the bundle of axons that form the optic nerve. The optic nerve is one of the most important parts of the eye. The optic nerve, sorely enough, cannot be repaired. Most of the parts of the eye, whenever there's a problem concerning them, the lenses are usually replaced. The cornea can be replaced. Every part of your eye can be replaced except when it comes to optic nerve damage. Optic nerve damage cannot be treated, cannot be replaced, and probably leads to blindness. So this is what you need to know about the eye as a sense. Here again, the cornea, and then we have the lens, and then we have at the back here the retina, which contains the rods and cones that are responsible for collecting the impulses and then sending them through the optic nerve to the brain to translate whatever you saw into an actual picture that you know. Now we're going to go to the second sense that we need to talk about, which is the hearing. In the hearing, it also goes to where? It also goes to a nerve impulse. The ear looks complicated, but it's quite simple. Let's look here. This is the outer part of the ear, which is called the ear pinna. The ear pinna looks like a flask because its job is to collect the sound waves. It is supposed to collect these sound waves into this passage. This passage, which is called the auditory canal. And then it is going to go here. This is the tympanic membrane, or as we call it, eardrum. The eardrum is a very thin and stretched membrane. It is going to vibrate as soon as the sound waves reach it, and then it is going to move these three bones, the malleus and the incus, and then the stapes. They are the three smallest bones in your body: malleus, incus, and stapes. You need to recall these three names. They might win you £1 million one day, okay, in a competition or whatever. So again, sound waves are going to be collected through your ear pinna. Then they enter into this canal that ends with the tympanic membrane, or as we call it, the eardrum. The eardrum, because it's very thin and stretched, it is going to vibrate to the sound waves. These vibrations are carried by these three bones, the smallest bones in your body, malleus, incus, and stapes, and then they are going to start being in the middle ear. The ear is going to collect the vibrations or the sound waves from the air. It amplifies them, which means that it makes them more, and then converts them into nerve impulses that are interpreted in your brain as sound. You have inside the ear what we call hair cells, which are specialized cells within your inner ear that contain mechanoreceptors. So in the eye we talked about the photoreceptors because they are collecting light. Here they are mechanoreceptors that are present in the hair cells, because the hair cells are going to move due to the vibrations of the sound that are going to reach them. They are mechanoreceptors. So the hair cells, they are specialized cells in the inner ear that contain mechanoreceptors that detect vibration. The hair cells are going to create a movement when they are bent. So the sound waves are entering your body from where? They are entering your body from the ear pinna, which collects the sounds and then pushes it into the auditory canal. From the auditory canal, it is going to cause vibration of the ear drum. And then malleus, incus, and stapes are going to vibrate and amplify, make it louder until it reaches the inner part of your ear. And these amplified vibrations are going to be transferred to the cochlea. The cochlea is a structure of fluid-filled canals in the inner ear where hair cells are located. The hair cells are present here. There are canals that are present here, as you can see them, and they are lined by the hair cells. The fluid in the cochlea is going to move in response to these vibrations. This movement is going to cause the hair cells to bend. Remember, what types of receptors we have in the hair cells? We have mechanoreceptors that respond to movement. Okay? Then, when the hair cells bend, an impulse is produced. This impulse is going to be carried, as usual, you need a nerve to carry the impulse. It is going to be carried by the auditory nerve to the brain. Again, it all goes down to an impulse, a nerve impulse, because this is where whatever you're listening to, whatever you're hearing is going to be translated into an actual sound. As you saw here during all the trajectory of the sound from the ear pinna until it reached the cochlea, we didn't hear about anything, any sound. We only heard about sound waves and movements. These sound waves and movements, they are going to be translated into actual sound that your brain understands. This is my mother's voice, this is a dog barking, this is a music playing. Whatever this is, it is going to be translated by the auditory nerve after going to reach your brain. The ear also has a part of it that's responsible for balance. Okay, balance is controlled by an organ in the middle ear, which are called the semicircular canals. These semicircular canals, they are responsible for keeping your balance. You've all have been through some times fainting or even losing your balance. The first thing that we need to check whenever you're losing your balance is the semicircular canals in your brain, because if there is a blockage anywhere here, you are going to be losing the balance. These impulses that are responsible for keeping your balance are carried by a different nerve, which is called the vestibular nerve. So we have the auditory nerve responsible for carrying the actual auditory impulses to your brain and to translate them into sounds, while the vestibular nerve is responsible for carrying the impulses here that are present in the semicircular canals in order to keep your balance. So when your head moves to one side, the fluid inside the semicircular canal moves. The movement bends the hair cells in the canals, and then they generate impulses that are transmitted to the brain through the vestibular nerve to keep your balance. So again, your ear which is the second sense organ we're talking about, is responsible for not only translating sounds, but also it is responsible for your balance. So the sound collected by the ear pinna, carried through the auditory canal, causing vibration of the tympanic membrane, carried by the malleus, incus, and stapes, and then into here into the cochlea. The cochlea is lined by hair cells, which are stimulated by which contain mechanoreceptors, which are stimulated by the sound waves, and then finally carried by the auditory nerve into your brain. Another important function of your ear is keeping your balance through the fluids present in the semicircular canals, and they send their impulses through the vestibular nerve. Here are the three little bones in your body. This is a very common question. The malleus, the incus, and the stapes, and they are responsible for carrying the impulses down to the cochlea. Now we're going to talk about the taste. The taste is carried out by your tongue. Of course, your tongue has a root, which is the start of the tongue that is stuck to your throat, and then we have the body of the tongue. All of your tongue is covered with what we call papillae. These are the small bridges that you have on the surface of your tongue. They increase its surface area and allow it to taste better. Of course, you have noticed that your food may have less flavor when you have a cold. If you haven't, you can try holding your nose the next time you eat. It will have a similar effect as having a cold. You will not taste the food properly because your sense of taste is less sensitive than when your nose is stuffed, because your smell and taste sense are closely related. So again, whenever you have a stuffed nose, you still can't taste the food better, although you taste the food with your tongue. But as a matter of fact, both your sense of smell and your sense of taste are closely related. Both the nose, which senses odors, and the tongue, which senses flavors, they have chemoreceptors. They have chemoreceptors that dissolve the certain whatever passes through them, and then you can sense it. These receptors, they detect molecules that are dissolved in liquid. The taste buds are chemoreceptors that detect tastes. They are found in bumps on the tongue, which are called papillae. All of these papillae, which are present on the surface of your tongue, they contain receptors, which are the taste buds. As in the nose, chemicals in your food, they are going to be dissolved within your saliva. They are going to generate impulses that are sent to your brain. We have 5 basic tastes that your tongue can detect. It can detect sweet, sour, salty, bitter, and savory. But it also can detect combination of many of them. It can combine salty with sour, sweet, and sour. Whatever 2 of them combined, the brain can still translate them. Here it is. This is one of the papillae. It contains the taste buds. These taste buds, they contain sensory nerve fibers. Remember, as we said, it all goes down to a nerve impulse. It has to be sensed by your brain in order to translate it. This is why, for example, if you're tasting something for the first time, although you still can taste it, but you don't have a translation in your brain. It doesn't tell you this is shrimp. It doesn't tell you this is ice cream, because you are still installing a software for this new taste into your brain. So you're going to taste it. Your tongue is only going to send a message saying this is sour, this is bitter, this is sweet, and then you are going to have a name. So they are going to tell you this is shrimp. So then the full information is going to reach your brain. This is shrimp, it tastes like this or like that, and then next time you taste it, you are going to recognize it by name and by taste. So as you see here, these are the taste cells, the taste pores through which it enters, and then it is going to be transmitted through the sensory nerve fibers and then into the brain. Okay, so these are the papillae. All of these small bridges on the surface of your tongue, they are the papillae that contain your taste buds. This is not the actual division of the taste. You remember we used to teach you this when you were younger because it's easier to understand. Then we go to your nose. Exactly like the tongue, we have on the inside of the nose what we call the nasal cavity. We have a coverage of mucous membrane. Mucous membrane is thin skin. You have all over your body skin, but if you touch the inside of your lips, the transparent skin that is covering the inside of your lip, this is the mucous membrane. You have similar mucous membrane lining the inside of your nose. This mucous membrane secretes mucus, and this mucus dissolves the different chemicals that are carried with the different smells, and this is how you can detect smell. Here, the vaporized odor molecule. So you enter a room, someone had a very strong perfume in this room. The chemicals floating in the air reach the nostrils and dissolve in the mucus, which is on the roof of each nostril. Nostril is each side of your nose. Underneath the mucus, in the olfactory epithelium, olfactory means that it's related to the sense of smell. Specialized receptor cells called olfactory receptors neurons are going to detect the odor. These neurons are capable of detecting thousands of different odors, and as we said, if this is an odor that you never smelled before, it is going to be sent to your brain to be put in a special drawer for a special software. The olfactory receptor neurons are going to transmit the information to the olfactory bulbs, which are located at the back of the nose. So it started at the top of the nostrils. Each nostril is one side of your nose, and then to the back of the nose. The olfactory bulbs, they have sensory receptors that are actually part of the brain, which is going to send messages directly through to the most primitive brain centers where they influence emotions and memories. Sometimes when you have a certain type of smell, you have a certain type of memory coming back to you. This is because your brain always combines smell with certain memories. These brain centers, they perceive odors and access memories to remind us about people, places, or events associated with these olfactory sensations. Then finally we have the integumentary system. The integumentary system, or the skin, is responsible for your sense of touch. Okay, the integumentary system here, let's look at it. It includes, of course, the hair, nails, and skin, and then the skin derivatives, which are hair, nails, and the different glands that you have under the surface of your skin. The skin. Your skin contains receptors that sense touch, temperature, and pain. So it contains mechanoreceptors, it contains thermoreceptors, and it contains pain receptors. Touch is sensed by mechanoreceptors, of course, movement or pressure or tension. The skin has two general types of mechanoreceptors. Mechanoreceptors that detect gentle touch that are located in the upper layer of the skin over here. In the upper layer of the skin, we have mechanoreceptors that detect simple touch. And then the mechanoreceptors that recognize heavy pressure that are found deeper within the skin. So, and then the temperature and the the temperature and pain are sensed by the thermoreceptors and pain receptors. The thermoreceptors detect, of course, the heat and cold. The pain receptors detect heat, cold, and then chemicals that are released by damaged cells. Some pain receptors also detect sharp pain, such as the pain you feel by stepping on a nail. Other pain receptors can sense blunt or throbbing pain like a bruise. So here in the upper part of your skin, you have mechanoreceptors that can detect the touch or the simple movement, and then the deeper part of your skin are going to detect harder push like the pressure or the tension. Here, as you see in this picture, These are part of the integumentary system. The hair starts from the hair root. By the way, the only point that is living in the hair is this part, the hair root. The rest of your hair is dead. So if you take care of your hair roots, the rest of your hair will look good. If you don't take care of your hair roots, the rest of your hair will not look as good. So again, your skin is responsible for the sense of touch, pressure, it has thermoreceptors, and it has pain receptors. This is a wrap up for this lesson about the different senses. It's in your book. Please read it in chapter 29, section 3. Next time we're going to be talking about the central and the peripheral nervous system. Thank you very much, grade 11.